Thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Liu to get us started. We will be recording this. In fact, we already are recording this, and we'll make this available on demand as well for any who are joining a little bit later. We have other team members who plan to be joining as well. But Steve, would you like to get us started?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Liu, and I come from the tech venture world. I'm a managing director focused on marketing and business development for the A2 Collective, which produces the A2 Pilot Awards on an annual basis. I'm also joined on the Zoom by who you just heard from, Rob Verdheim, who is managing director focused on operations for us. So on behalf of the A2 Collective, it is my pleasure to welcome you to an exclusive webinar in partnership with Joy Tolliver of the NIA Small Business Programs regarding their exciting Startup Prize Challenge for Healthy Aging. At this time, I'd like to bring up Dr. Rose Lee, a former NIA branch chief, who is the principal investigator for the coordinating center of the A2 Collective, in short, me and Rob's boss. Rose will give a brief overview of the A2 Collective and introduce Joy. Rose?
Thank you, Steve. Welcome, everybody. I am truly a servant leader, making sure that Rob and Steve have what they need to make sure this program moves forward. So I'm delighted to do a very brief introduction. Most of you know what the A2 Collective is about, but for those of you who are new to it, the A2 Collective represents the National Institute on Aging's Artificial Intelligence and Technology Collaboratories for Aging Research, or AITC program, which is dedicated to helping Americans live longer, better through the application of artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. It's a fairly new program. It was funded in September of 2021. The A2 Collective is comprised of 3 AITC collaboratories, and they are centered at Johns Hopkins University, the University of Massachusetts, and the University of Pennsylvania. And the coordinating center is managed by Rose Lee and Associates, and we're based in Bethesda, Maryland. This is all available on our website if you want to learn more about each of these programs. And the A2 Collective ecosystem involves collaborations and partnerships with a number of accelerators, incubators, nonprofit, government agencies, and tech venture capital organizations that are all motivated to help move this area forward. Just a little bit about the A2 Pilot Awards that's part of this A2 Collective. The A2 Collective has earmarked $40 million over the next 5 years to host the A2 Pilot Awards, which is a national pilot project competition funded by the NIA through the AITC program. The A2 Pilot Awards will fund promising AI and technology pilot projects that seek to improve the care and health outcomes for older Americans, including persons with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. Applicants can request up to $200,000 in non-dilutive direct costs. That's not including indirect costs over a 6 to 12 month period. And applicant institution can be any fiscally responsible organization that's located in the United States. So that in a nutshell is what the Pilot Awards are about. And the reason that we are so excited about having this session is we believe that the NIA Healthy Aging Challenge is an outstanding opportunity for our AITC Pilot Award applicants who would benefit by this 4-month bootcamp, mentorship, and networking opportunity. It's really helpful for those with innovative ideas for a science-driven technology or product and new to the entrepreneurial space. We see this as a great training and introduction to help our AITC Pilot Award applicants become more competitive for our program as well, and beyond that toward an SBIR or STTR grant that provides much more substantial funding to small businesses. We sent a heads up about this opportunity, this particular webinar, to over 700 people on our A2 email list, and we saw a 50% open rate with 274 click-throughs. We therefore saw an opportunity to invite NIA to present to you all and answer your specific questions. We also have a strong interest in engaging innovators from underrepresented backgrounds, including but not limited to women, individuals with disabilities, and individuals from racial and ethnic minority populations. I know that is also a key concern of NIA on this Healthy Aging Challenge. Joy Tolliver is with the NIA Office of Strategic Extramural Programs. She coordinates NIA participation in the NIH Applicant Assistance Program, and collaborates with stakeholders to promote NIA small business programs and initiatives in an effort to build a pipeline of researchers and entrepreneurs from unique and underrepresented backgrounds. She's been very involved with the NIA Healthy Aging Challenge, and we are delighted to have her join us today on short notice to present and answer your specific questions. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. Just want to check to make sure the slides are up for everyone.
Yep.
Great. So awesome. So thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you to everyone who has dialed in today to engage with us. We're really excited about this new pilot program called the Healthy Aging Startup Challenge and Bootcamp. And this program is really aimed to foster diversity and accelerate innovations that are in the aging space. And very happy to tell you a little bit more about the program and answer any questions that you may have. My name is Joy Tolliver. I'm a program analyst with the National Institute on Aging's Office of Strategic Extramural Programs. And our office manages the small business programs, the SBIR and the STTR federal grants, which provides over $140 million in non-dilutive seed funding that is awarded to U.S. small businesses that are developing innovations that are of interest to the NIA within our mission space. We've partnered for this startup challenge with the Office of Special Populations within the NIA, who really focuses on catalyzing research to understand and address health disparities for older adults. And so within this challenge, we have a special interest in ideas that focus on health disparities in the older adult population. So first, I really want to start with going through what our research interests are for this program, and also aligns very directly with what our research interests are for the SBIR and the STTR grants. So we strategically fund innovations that generally are going to fall into these 4 buckets in the box to your left. And that is Alzheimer's disease and Alzheimer's related dementias and age-related changes in the brain, aging in place, age-related diseases and conditions, and research tools. And within these 4 broad topic areas, we fund a variety of different technologies and products. Generally, they fall under one of these 5 buckets in the middle, which is digital health, sensing and monitoring technologies, treatments, diagnostics, and devices. And I would say in terms of age tech, digital health and sensing and monitoring technologies represent about 1/3 of our active awards, and we have about 275 active awards right now. And it's certainly an area which we've seen a lot of growth in the last several years. So as I mentioned, our program has $140 million in SBIR, STTR funding per year that we're obligated to award to small businesses. And it hasn't always been that way. We used to be a very tiny institute in terms of funding just a few years ago. Our funding has really dramatically increased, largely due to Congress prioritizing Alzheimer's research. And so as our program funding has had this tremendous, very, very quickly growth in funding, we really put a lot of effort into looking at our program and the type of projects that we're funding, the researchers that we're funding, and trying to identify, how do we attract the best and the brightest ideas and really have a breadth of different technologies and products that we're funding. And so, of course, diversity came up, and we know that research tells us that teams that have a strong representation of diverse individuals that can provide very unique and differing perspectives and really challenge the status quo often put forth very innovative ideas and very inclusive ideas. And this can have great utility in terms of developing innovations that are going to help the older adult populations. But what we know is that certain groups, such as women and individuals from racial and ethnic minority groups, are often underrepresented in life science entrepreneurship and participating in U.S. Biomedical sciences. So we really did a lot of digging into, why is this so, and what is within our power that we can do to help to foster diversity in aging research and in life science entrepreneurship. So we've spent a lot of time engaging stakeholders, gathering public input, and we also conducted a focus group study, which was really awesome last year, to really dig into learning about what are those obstacles that are faced by diverse individuals when they are trying to start a company and obtain that early funding. And so what we found is some unique obstacles that were faced really across the board on all the focus group members. And it really meshed well with what we saw in the reports that we were studying and the conversations we were having with stakeholders. And this really lists out some of those really key obstacles that are faced. And what we found is each of those obstacles really tied into critical components of an SBIR application that can make your application more competitive. So it made sense. If these are the unique obstacles that are being faced, it makes sense that these applications that are coming into the SBIR program may not be competitive, or the SBIR applications may be lower for specific groups, and these are the reasons why. So some of the things that we discovered was that there was really a struggle in raising pre-seed capital to support initial development or to actually incorporate and start your company. And this is really tied to being able to start your company, develop a prototype, generate preliminary data. And another obstacle that we found was finding partners and collaborators or team members with the necessary expertise, especially if you're not necessarily coming from an academic setting where you don't have those research connections and access to facilities. And this is really important because in an SBIR application, we're really looking for an experienced team and collaborators. And another challenge that we found is access to key industry networks, access to quality advice about how to start a business, and access to mentors, and in particularly shared mentors with shared background that can really understand your unique obstacles and can really give advice from a personal perspective, having experienced some of the same things. And these things all tie into critical components of what makes an SBIR application competitive: letters of support, collaborators, understanding how to talk about the business side of your idea. And lastly, really understanding the NIH peer review process and how do I prepare my concept for the reviewer audience to have a favorable review and get a competitive score that can be funded. So we took these findings and we used them as the foundation of a prize competition. And prize competitions are authorized under the 21st Century Cures Act and the America Competes Act. And prize competitions allow federal agencies to engage with the public in order to identify very innovative solutions that are of interest to the agency mission. So prize competitions award ideas, and the award, unlike a grant, which gives you funding for predetermined tasks or R&D, the award for prize competitions are cash and non-cash prizes that are awarded purely for your idea, and there's no sort of stipulations in terms of what you have to do with the prize if you win. So the goal of this prize competition is really to foster diversity in aging research and entrepreneurship. And a secondary goal really ties back to the SBIR program and encouraging participation by socioeconomically disadvantaged small businesses and women-owned small businesses, encouraging their participation in the SBIR program. So we've designed this program as sort of a precursor, if you will, to applying for SBIR, whereas we really want to focus on those critical areas that we have identified as needs and that can strengthen an SBIR proposal. And the hope is that companies who participate in this competition can then move forward and have the resources and the skills they need to, in the future, submit an SBIR application that will be competitive and funded. The eligibility for the prize competition, this is sort of a very high level eligibility. We are looking for individuals or a team of individuals who are US citizens or permanent residents. With the focus on diversity, we really are looking for those teams or individuals that have a demonstrated need to participate in this challenge. So maybe they don't have the academic connections, but they have a really great idea, or maybe they have a really great idea, but they don't have access to academic collaborators that can help them to carry out their research. And so we're really looking for those individuals who have a demonstrated need for entrepreneurial training, for mentorship, and for cash to be able to get their idea off the ground. All of the participants or applicants must propose an idea that is relevant to the NIA's mission. So a science-driven technology or product that aligns with the research interests that I discussed earlier. And also that has the potential to increase the diversity of NIA-funded R&D. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by diversity a little bit later. And lastly, applicants must be willing to commit to 4 to 6 hours per week to participate in an entrepreneurial boot camp as part of this challenge, plus a in-person networking event that will be held in September. And I'll go a little bit more into what the boot camp would look like in timeline and structure later. So here's the overview of this program. So it is a little unique in that generally with prize competitions, there is a call for an idea and you submit your idea and you're awarded the prize, and that's it. So what we did was to really put forth a phased program. And the reason that we did this was a lot of the feedback that we got from research entrepreneurs that had tried to obtain SBIR funding or participated in other programs was that the level of time commitment it takes to put together a proposal or to go through a program and resources and energy, and the unfortunate occurrence that if at the end of that time commitment you aren't funded, you're sort of left empty-handed. And you put all this time and effort, and there's really no outcome for you. And so what we really wanted to do was spread the resources as much as possible through this mechanism. And so we developed it in a phased manner, in which we would like to select up to 20 finalists to participate in an entrepreneur boot camp, to have access to mentors and skill building and entrepreneurial workshops. And these are our non-cash prizes. And so finalists will pitch at the end of the boot camp to be selected as one of 5 winners to receive a $60,000 cash prize. So even if you go through the 4-month boot camp and unfortunately you're not selected to receive the $60,000 cash prize, you still have a ton of resources that are very useful to help you propel your idea to the next step. And you didn't just participate in this boot camp and kind of leave empty-handed. And if you win the cash prize, great. So I'll talk a little bit more about that middle stage, the boot camp, later. So at the end of this program, our goal is for all the participants, whether you were, a finalist or you were a winner, all the participants would have formed a company. If you haven't already formed a company, you've identified team members, collaborators, strategic partners, funding sources, so that you have a good team together and a nice plan set in place on, how, where, and how to get your next funding. All the participants will conduct customer discovery interviews with potential customers, with strategic partners and third-party stakeholders to really understand their idea. Everyone will develop and refine a pitch deck as a framework to a business plan. And this pitch deck is what the finalists will be presenting at the end of the boot camp to be selected as winners. All the participants will have built relationships with mentors that we anticipate will continue outside of the program. There will be opportunities for exposure to industry so that you can expand your professional network within the program as well as outside of the program. More objectives will be that you understand really the SBIR, STTR grant application process, really the nuts and bolts of how to craft an application, how to make it competitive. And everyone will have a roadmap to, where do I go from here to accelerate my idea? So the Entrepreneurial Bootcamp has two major components to it. One is the skill building and exposure. And then the second piece of that is really the mentorship. So in terms of the Entrepreneur Bootcamp, that will kick off mid-July through mid-November. And participants will be expected to commit about 4 to 6 hours per week to participate in entrepreneurial workshops and exercises, as well as panels that we'll put together with federal funding programs, investors that are interested in early stage investments in the aging space, accelerator programs, as well as a panel with successful SBIR awardees who can talk about their experience and how they were able to obtain SBIR funding to accelerate their technology, and to give tips, about how you can do that as well. As part of the Entrepreneur Bootcamp, we really wanted to make sure that we gave participants as much exposure as possible. And so to the left, the 4 to 6 hours a week, entrepreneur workshops and exercises, that is all virtual. The in-person component is in September, the 19th through the 22nd. And we really wanted an opportunity for folks to be able to meet in person. So the participants will be able to meet in person to participate in a 2-day entrepreneurial immersion course in Boston. And then following that 2-day entrepreneurial immersion course, they will be able to attend the Redefining Early Stage Investments Conference, the RESI conference in Boston, to get exposure to industry that way. And prior to attending this conference, we'll be really working with you on prepping you to attend this conference, how to have conversations with investors and strategics so that you're comfortable going in. And the travel expenses for this in-person component will be paid entirely by the NIA. The second piece of the Entrepreneur Bootcamp is really around mentorship. And so one of the things that we learned is, the desire to have a mentor to guide you, to understand, the struggles that you're going through and to give you tips and connections with folks in the industry that they may have. So every participant will be matched with a primary mentor, which they will meet with bi-weekly, one-on-one. And then 1 to 2 additional mentors with complementary expertise and background, depending on what the participants' needs are and the technology that they're developing. And so you'll have a monthly meeting with your primary mentor plus your 2 secondary mentors to really brainstorm and talk about your idea, to debrief from weekly workshops and to review your pitch deck and your business plan and to really tap into their expertise. And then the last piece of the mentorship is just the peer mentoring component and being able to connect with other innovators that are developing aging innovations as well. And so at the end of this boot camp, the finalists will pitch, and we will select up to 5 winners who will each receive the $60,000 cash prize. And so, as I mentioned, all the finalists will have these sort of non-cash prizes, resources, skills, industry exposure, mentorship, and then the winners will have all that and, a nice $60,000 cash prize. And, our hope is really in taking the cash prize or the non-cash prize resources that the participants can then use that to make some forward movement in their business to accelerate their idea, and then to later apply for SBIR funding and be in a better position to compete. So if this has sparked your interest, the application is now open, and the deadline is May 23rd. And you can submit your application to NIA Start-Up Challenge at mail.nih.gov. During Q&A, I'll make sure to drop a link in the chat with how you can get to that application. And then we just ask that you do not include any confidential or proprietary information in your application. So speaking of application, I want to go through the evaluation criteria. And so this is really how we're looking at the applications. These 1 through 5 criteria are what we call our more technical criteria. And so the first is significance. And so you're going to be asked to talk about the significance of your idea. So what is the unmet need in the older adult population that your technology is addressing? Number 2 talks about innovation, and describe your innovation. How novel is it? What is the competitive advantage, and what is the differentiation in what you are proposing and what is currently on the market, and how is it meeting that unmet need? Number 3 is approach. And so as the NIA, the innovations that we fund must have a scientific component. It has to be driven by research. And so in number 3, you would talk about what that scientific premise of your idea is, and how would you address obvious problem areas. So if you put your reviewer hat on and look at your summary of your technology, just imagine what are some of the questions or kind of critiques that someone would have. I often tell applicants to let other people review, their summary, because a lot of times they can highlight things that maybe you haven't thought of or may seem obvious to you, but it's not. And so make sure that you address some of those things in your application. Number 4 talks about commercialization. So is there a clearly defined market for what you're proposing? And what is the unique value proposition? And number 5 is where you would talk about the innovators, either your individual applicant or each of your team members. So we're looking for information about the innovators that demonstrate that there's going to be a high level of commitment to participating in the program, that there's relevant expertise, that there's a passion behind what you're doing. And if there is a gap in expertise on the team, that you have identified that and you understand that this is my weakness and this is why I want to participate in this program. Number 6 and 7 are weighted more heavily than 1 through 5 because they address really the goal behind this particular program, and that is to really provide resources to innovators with a demonstrated need, and to have some impact on diversifying aging research and life science entrepreneurship. So question 6 asks about challenge impact, and this is where you would talk about your journey so far and how you feel that the challenge is going to impact you and to help you to further accelerate your idea and ultimately commercialize the innovation. And number 7 talks about the impact on diversity. And so what we're looking for here is, how does your participation in this program, what is the potential impact to increase the diversity of aging research, and in particular NIA funded R&D. So we're looking for at least 2 of the ways that are listed here. So it could be that your technology or product addresses a gap in what we're currently funding. And so you can use NIH Reporter to kind of look through what our awards look like and what we're already funding in different technology areas. The second bullet really talks about addressing a unique need of the older adult population that are, minority, racial, ethnic minority groups or in underserved areas. And so this really is aligning with our special interests in health disparities in older adults. So if your technology focuses on that, that's of interest to us as well. And then last, we really are seeking individuals that have a background or even a unique life experience that would bring some diverse perspective to aging research and development. And so you would really talk through what that background and that or that unique life experience is, and how that's going to help you to develop an aging innovation that is informed and inclusive and truly innovative. So the judging criteria for this program, all the applications will go through an administrative review to look for eligibility, basic eligibility, and mission relevance. And all of those applications that are, that the applicant is eligible and that the idea is relevant to our mission will then go to a group of technical reviewers. And these technical reviewers are non-federal employees that we have recruited that have expertise in aging research and entrepreneurship, investment, or product development that are really relevant to aging innovations. And they will review criterias, the technical criterias, to give a preliminary review and scoring. Their preliminary review and scoring will then be sent to the judges panel, which is a federal judges panel that will comprise of the SBIR program staff at the NIA, as well as division representatives from each of the divisions at the NIA, who will then have a final review of the entire application and scoring, and will recommend the finalists and the winners to the award approving official, who is the director of the NIA. And okay, so here are important dates. If you're on the call and you think that you actually may be a good mentor for this program, we are recruiting mentors. The deadline was May 2nd, but we're still, accepting folks if you have an interest and there's a really strong alignment with what we're looking for. Other than that, the application submission period ends on May 23rd. The finalists will be announced June 30th, and the boot camp will start, as I mentioned, mid-July through mid-November. So you'll really be immersed into a lot of entrepreneurial workshops and activities and mentorship and the in-person networking event. And through all this time frame and participating in the boot camp, you will be working in the background on really developing and refining your pitch deck, which would be due December 5th. And we'll announce the winners in January 2023. And so if you are interested in applying, you can visit our website, nia.nih.gov/startup challenge. And at the very bottom, there's an email address that goes directly to myself if you'd like to set up a call to ask any specific questions or to discuss a potential application. Happy to set up a time to do that as well. I guess I'll just leave this up in case you all want to take down the email address or the website. I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Joey. I've started to collect some of the questions that have come in over chat. Just go in order as I've seen them come in. The first question was related to a link to the application and when the application deadline was. Rose responded to that just to re-verify. That's May 23rd, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I guess this one was on my mind, and others may ask this as well. With the deadline just a couple of weeks away at this point, what recommendations do you have for those who are learning about this now and are seeking over the next couple of weeks to put in a competitive application?
Okay, so first I would say that this is by no way similar to an SBIR application in terms of the level of detail or time commitment, and we did that on purpose. It's a simple 7-question application that goes through those 1 through 7 criteria. And I think the word limit is like between 150 and 250 words. And so I definitely think it's doable, in the time frame that is left. In terms of strategies on how to put forth a competitive application, really ensuring that it is very clear that your idea aligns with the interests of the NIA. A lot of times ideas can get kind of muddled because aging isn't necessarily a disease, and sometimes other diseases fall under another institute, like in Cancer Institute, for example. So be very sure that you're very clear about the unmet need in the older adult population. And then in terms of competitiveness, really focusing on question 6 and question 7, which is more heavily weighted in terms of the scoring criteria.
Thank you, Joy. I've seen a few more come in, so I'll start from the top. First I see here is, are you eligible if you already work for a small startup company and need funding to develop a new product platform within that company and could benefit from HTech leadership and mentorship?
Yes, you are eligible if you already work for a startup company. So you do not have to have a company formed already to participate in this challenge. That is something that we will address during the program for those participants who don't have a company formed already. If you do, great. But the idea here is that we really want to attract folks that are going to be developing an innovation that they want to accelerate after this program.
Thank you. There was a reference that you made to the medically underserved populations. And there was a question regarding if you could put some parameters on that, or if that means any age. And this is obviously NIA, and there's often an emphasis on aging populations, but can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, so I'll look for a link to put in the chat if I have time. But in terms of medically underserved population, I guess the simplest way to put this is one of our focus areas is really on rural, older adults that live in rural areas, areas that have a shortage of providers. We're very interested in technologies that are able to bridge that gap in terms of access to care, and in terms of improving care coordination, those type of things.
Great. And I will follow up with you about a link. We have a lot of questions, and I don't want you searching for a link right now, so I can follow up with you to see if you can share that with us, and then we can add that and make it available if that works for you. Next question in the chat was, if the focus of the award is targeted exclusively to non-academics, or can academics also apply?
There's a link, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
So is it focused? Okay, so the answer to that question is that it is open to both of those groups. And we found and understand the challenges with both of those groups. So we have had applicants and awardees that have very strong academic focus that really, really struggle when it comes to communicating the business behind their idea and the commercial potential and how to navigate entrepreneurship. And on the flip side, we've had applicants and awardees that come more from the business world that have a really great idea, but they struggle in terms of the research component and really being able to identify strategic partners in terms of collaborators, researchers with the necessary expertise to be able to carry out what they're proposing to do. And so I guess the answer to that question is it's open to both people who fall into both of those categories.
Thank you. The next question is, if someone has an SBIR and they're applying for phase 2, are they still eligible to apply?
So if you are the PI on an active SBIR award, you would be ineligible to apply.
If you are the PI.
Yes, and if your award is at the NIA, reach out to me because we have other resources for awardees in terms of entrepreneurship training.
Thank you. The next question is an MVP required, and how much competitive edge does it give you if you have one?
Is what required?
An MVP.
I'm not sure what that is.
I don't either. So if
Okay. Whoever asked that question,
the question,
can you just clarify that?
Unmute, yeah. A minimum viable product.
Okay, is it required?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying in the chat.
Thank you.
Someone asked if you can also share a link to the office hours, or if that's easily available on the challenge website.
Yeah, so
Or is it too late for office hours?
the office hours basically got booked within minutes of our last pre-application webinar. And I've opened up additional ones twice now, and we don't have any more available. But I'm happy to look at my calendar on a individual basis to see if there's a time that I can talk to you. So I would say the strategy now is to email me at NIA Start-Up Challenge and to send me your question and let me know that you want to set up a call, and I can take a look at my calendar and see what we can do.
Next question I have noted is, will applicants receive any feedback or critiques from reviewers if they are not selected?
Yeah, so, we just had this conversation last week, and we would like to do that. What we've done in the past is provide feedback on a case-by-case basis. If you reach out and ask for it, we can go to the reviewer notes and give you that feedback. Right now, there's not going to be a formal, summary statement, if you will. But we're thinking about it. It's just going to come down to bandwidth and how many applications that we receive. So I would say if you apply and you're not selected and you really would like feedback, to reach back out to the NIA Startup Challenge address, and we can provide you with some feedback.
Next question is, would all team members need to be available for the entire program, including the, I think, 4 to 6 hours per month you said, as well as the workshop?
The answer is no, but someone needs to be designated as a team leader to be available on most of the workshops, and if they're not available, it is expected that someone will be. And the NIA Startup Challenge email address does go directly to me. I just saw a question about that.
Let's see here. Is an idea of enhancement to, sorry, I'm reading this live. Is an idea of enhancement to an already existing application will be considered, or should be a brand new? So I think the question is, can an enhancement to an existing application or product be considered, or should be a brand new development?
Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing that they applied to SBIR.
But have maybe some other existing technology or solution, and they're looking to maybe apply for the challenge as a way to continue research or development toward commercialization, perhaps.
Yes, you can propose something like that.
And if I mischaracterizing that for the person who asked, feel free to clarify.
Yeah. So if you have a current technology, and for example, now it's a digital health platform, and you want to now incorporate some AI component to that, then yes, that would be of interest.
Thank you. And is there a deadline for implementation of the innovation after the, let's say, post award?
Mm-hmm. So no, for prize competitions, as I mentioned, there's no required deliverable per se, after participation. So, you know, you're not required to do anything after. We really are sifting through and looking for folks that we feel like are going to be committed and will, you know, move their technologies forward, but there won't be sort of a check back period and requirement for you to take any specific steps after participating.
Thank you. You referenced combining business and academic research earlier, and someone chatted that they fit the business person that maybe be looking to enhance research capabilities. Do you feel like this program can add value to a proposed project in that realm?
Yes. Yes, and so for someone like that who is coming from the business side of things and they're really looking for, you know, building out their team and adding that expertise, for example, we would look to match that person with mentors that can be able to help with that particularly high area of need for them.
There was a question earlier about phase 2 for someone who already has an SBIR, but if there's an SBIR pending, are they eligible to apply?
So the answer is yes, as long as you do not have an active, as long as you're not a PI on an active award, you can apply. And on an active award that is active by the submission end date, which is May 23rd. So if you just applied and you have an application under review, that's likely not going to, you're likely not going to know an outcome, you know, by May 23rd.
Thank you. And then the next question is, does the application need to be high-tech, AI, et cetera, or can a low-cost but effective solution also be a viable product for this application?
Yes, a low-cost, maybe not super techy, but simple and effective solution is of interest, especially if you are targeting, you know, rural populations where there may be challenges with internet connections and things like that. Just ensure that there is some, you know, research driving the development of that product.
That's key. And can you provide any insight into the number of applications that you may expect?
I don't know. This is our first time doing this. So I really don't know. I anticipate that based on the interest level, we should receive a good number of applications, but you know, we'll see.
Got it. I've got a couple more. I'm going to skip to one that just came in as long as we're still sort of on the topic of SBIR. A follow-up question related to SBIR if it's pending. An SBIR has been selected but not yet awarded, covering all the bases here. So notification but pre-award of an SBIR.
Technically, if it's not active, then I think you can, you know, participate.
Okay. And can we also share your direct email? You referenced earlier about office hours. They can reach out to you directly. Is that something that we can add as well?
Yes, so it's NIA Start-Up Challenge at nih.gov.
Okay, those all go to you.
Yep, that's just my second email box.
I'm sure you have a lot of things in your email on a daily basis. And then the last question that I currently see, there's another that came in, is if you're an academic, can you be a trainee or at the fellow stage?
Either is eligible.
Okay. I know this is getting to phase 2 based on what we've seen on the challenge website, but there's a question about whether there's any tips, advice on what they may be, what you may be looking for in the video component of the application.
There's no video component of the application.
I know when I was reading it, I'm guessing this is referring to the video application for the funding, right? That's sort of the second phase later year. But having read about it a little bit myself, it seems like that's something that mentors and the bootcamp will be helping develop over this next period of time?
Yes, yes. And the way the workshops will be set up, they'll be really going through kind of the key components, which is generally in a pitch deck, to help you kind of develop out each of those components as you go through the bootcamp. And yes, Rob, your mentors will be helping you to really crack that so that you're ready to be competitive and pitch that at the end of the bootcamp.
I imagine that that's what this person is asking, but if there's any need to clarify, please do. That gets through all the questions that have currently come through the chat. Thank you for all of the questions that have come through so far. I'm looking to see if there's any others that I have noted that haven't already been asked.
I might follow up with the question,
Cameron?
Joy,
Yeah, please.
about whether you think a competitive team would have to have both an academic and a business person represented. Is that something that would be positive?
So the focus here on the team is not the same as if we were looking at SBIR applications. The whole point is that we realize that folks have gaps in their team. And a lot of times they get dinged on those gaps in their team. So that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for, rather, if you do have a gap in your team, is that you know that you do, and you communicate how you anticipate that participating in the challenge is going to help you to be able to fill that gap.
Okay, and so no expectations about an advanced degree, which is something we always hear about.
No. So if you don't have a PhD or heavy research experience and you have a great idea, you're not going to get dinged for that. If you are that person, but you were a caregiver to your grandmother and you have this unique perspective based on that experience that you have, that's what we would like to see in your application in question 7. And so, no, you don't have to have an advanced degree or a complete competitive team. That's really the purpose of this challenge, is to help folks fill in the gaps so that they can later be competitive for SBIR funding.
Okay, and can you say something about the review group? Because a lot of NIH reviewers tend to be coming from academia. So are you expecting a great proportion of people to be representing different life experiences, entrepreneurs, and if you could say something about that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the applications will go through a technical review first, and these are all folks outside of the NIH. They are people who have kind of a broad range of experience, whether it's investing, life science entrepreneurship, product development, mentoring early stage companies, to really look at these applications and provide a preliminary review. And their feedback and scoring will then go to a federal judges panel. The federal judges panel will be made up of the SBIR, the NIA SBIR staff. So we understand, generally, not everybody understands SBIR. So the good thing is that we understand SBIR, we understand the goals of the programs and what the challenges are for folks trying to get into the SBIR program. So we made up of SBIR program staff and a representative from each of the 4 NIH divisions, who will likely be the program officers that hold most of the SBIR applications within their division.
Okay.
Thanks for those, Rose. A few others that have come in. One that came to mind for me as well is if you can speak a little bit to how mentors would be matched with members of the bootcamp.
Yeah, so what we are going to do is try to match up mentors based on what the participant needs and the mentor's background as close as possible. And so that primary mentor we hope to have someone with a shared background as the primary mentor with relevant expertise. And then the 1 to 2 secondary mentors will be functioning sort of like subject matter experts with any additional areas of need. So say a person, you know, expresses they really have, they need someone with regulatory experience. Maybe the secondary mentor will have background in regulatory experience, for example. So we're really going to be matching by the participants' needs and by the mentor's background. The mentors will also have an opportunity to sift through the application so they can find something they really find enthusiastic, because of course they'll be more invested in something that they're very interested in. So there'll be a component of that as well.
That sounds like a great opportunity, especially for such a wide cohort. There was a question related to the number of hours that you may estimate to complete an application, if there's any insight you can provide there. I know it's somewhat subjective, I imagine.
The number of hours to complete the application?
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a really tough question. I think it depends on how well you know your technology, how often you've already communicated your idea before. I will say that it's 7 questions and the word cap is 250 words. So you can't really go too much into the nuts and bolts. You can't attach any images or videos or anything like that. So it should not take a significant amount of time.
The application I saw it's available, and I was reading through it today, and I guess the very broad answer is no longer than 2 weeks at this point, because we're 2 weeks out. There's a question related to the health disparities framework, the NIA Health Disparities Framework. And someone asked if there would be examples of projects that have been incorporated into that framework.
Yeah, so for health disparities research framework questions, the best person to talk to would be Dr. Patricia Jones. And she was on the pre-application webinar that we had, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. So her office actually really worked to develop this health disparities research framework. And so if you have specific questions on how to incorporate that into your technology, I would encourage you to reach out to me. And she has graciously offered to speak with applicants and answer their questions about that.
Great. Joy, no additional questions have come in. We're about 2 minutes away from closing, so I'll close the Q&A for now and just reinforce that Joy has kindly said that if you have additional questions, you can email to the email address, which will be shared in the slide deck. We will be making this recording available in the next couple of days, which we'll send a link out through our mailing address. We'll put it on the A2collective.ai website. It'll be on our YouTube channel. And we'll also be sharing the link with the AITCs that we're working closely with, who I know also sent out an email to all of their mailing lists, so we can make this available far and wide. Joey, we specifically want to thank you for taking additional time to do this with us and our group today. Rose, for taking some time at the top to talk a little bit about the collective. Steve, for the intro on all the different things that we're doing on the venture side. And of course, everyone who attended to learn more about this opportunity today. We appreciate the hour plus that you've given us. I think with that, we will close it out. Joy, is there anything that you'd like to close with though?
No, just thank you for, allowing me to present to the group here. And, I look forward to engaging with anyone who's interested in applying.
Great. Well, thank you all again. We'll have some resources available in the coming days for you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.